Hi, I'm back again with another excerpt from Finding Yoyu. And if you've been following along, then you know that in the last video, I shared about the time when I realized it was no longer safe for Otosan to drive us to the hospital. Though he did drive many times after that, I'll leave that story for another day. Today I wanted to share about a couple of the days that we stayed home and didn't go to the hospital. Oh, here we go. Summer in the Hiba Mountains feels just right. It's cool enough that you need a blanket at night, and during the day it's hot enough to make you sweat without being unbearable. Therefore, on the days we didn't go into town to see Okasan, Otosan spent most of his time outside unless it was mealtime. On one of those days, I had been on my computer all morning. I decided not to call Otosan back for lunch and figured he would show up eventually when he got tired or hungry. Sure enough, around 2:30 he came in looking for tea. We decided to skip lunch, and I made green tea in the way Okasan taught me. I brought out a few snacks to nibble, and Otosan started talking about his childhood. I had heard most of the stories before, but without the TV on to distract him, he went into more detail than ever before. I usually loved listening to the crazy antics of his childhood. However, that day I was so sleepy that it was all I could do to keep my eyes open. I didn't want to be rude and kept nibbling the sweet potato chips to keep my eyes open. I started to wonder if he would ever stop. While nodding my head as I listened, I pulled out my iPhone and turned on the stopwatch. 2 hours and 13 minutes later, Otosan finally decided to head back outside to finish his latest garden project. I was exhausted. When I told Akira about it, he said I was crazy and that I should have told him I had work to do. It was true, I did have work to do. Yet, this time here in Hiroshima seemed precious. I imagined that someday I would get sick of hearing his stories and long for my freedom in Tokyo. For now, the quiet days in the mountains felt like a dream. I would never tell Akira, but there was a strange moment while listening to Otosan that day when I saw him as a man. For a moment, I didn't see the wrinkled 87-year-old. I saw the vibrant young man that still lives inside of him. For a moment, I connected across the table with the twinkle in his eye. I felt like a young woman seeing a young man. For a split second, it felt different. And then I was horrified and a little disgusted. Now, years later, I'm grateful for those lazy summer days. I'm thankful I got to hear Otosan's stories while they still seemed plausible. I'm grateful I got to share in the adventures and see him as the charmer he once was. I remember that day when I saw him. I remember that day when for a split second I saw into his soul. On the days when I can't find him, when his eyes seem unfocused and his stories make no sense, I remember that day. I remember him. Those days alone with Otosan, I never felt uncomfortable. I never felt threatened, at risk, or unwelcome. We quickly fell into a rhythm that serves us even today. I'm married to his son and love his son fiercely, yet the natural rhythm of my day fits more closely with Otosan. Even today in Tokyo, we both wake up naturally around 4 or 5 a.m. and fall asleep around 9 p.m. I remember the first time Akira went away on a business trip after Otosan moved to Tokyo to live with us. I was nervous and worried that I would feel awkward when it was just the two of us. My worry was unnecessary. We had already established our rhythm during that summer in Hiroshima. And here's a section from another similar day. Some days, if I got busy with my work, I wouldn't call Otosan in for afternoon tea until nearly 5 p.m. And if I still wanted to work some more before dinner, I would turn on the TV before serving the tea so he wouldn't start talking. No matter what Akira advised, once Otosan started talking, I felt obligated to listen. One day, I was trying to finish up a website for a new client. I called Otosan in for tea and immediately turned on the TV so I could go back to my computer without being rude. We drank our tea and ate the sweets quietly, and soon after he stretched out on the sofa and fell asleep to the sound of the TV. I left him there and headed back upstairs to work on my computer. He must have slept deeply because it was 2 hours later and already getting dark when I finally heard him stirring. I heard him lock and then unlock the front door several times and comment on how dark it was outside. I headed down the stairs and into the kitchen to prepare dinner. Otosan came back into the family room, which is connected to the kitchen, and sat down again on the sofa. It was already going on 8 o'clock, which is later than normal for our dinner. I knew Otosan wouldn't mind because the last few nights he had not come in from working outside until after 8, so I wasn't worried. Otosan sat and watched TV for a while and then, to my surprise, asked if the meal was ready or not. That should have been my first sign that something was off, because he often says he doesn't need dinner, though he would eagerly eat whatever and whenever I served it. I figured he was just extra hungry. I quickly finished preparing the spaghetti and apologized that it was later than usual. He looked at the plate oddly, but ate it anyway. That should have been another clue that something was off. Instead, I guessed he was perturbed that there was only one dish and not a variety of side dishes as I usually serve. I was tired, though, and decided not to worry. I had served him a full breakfast, lunch, and an afternoon snack, so I knew he wasn't starving. Usually, we would watch TV for a while after dinner, and then we would both head for bed around 9 p.m. Around 8:30, Otosan suddenly got up and said he was going out to the garden to work. I was speechless. He got up and headed for the front door, and then I heard him yelp, "It's dark!" It took a minute for me to realize that he thought it was 8:30 in the morning instead of 8:30 at night. I went to the door and explained to him that it was night. We had a good laugh, and he admitted that all this time he thought he had slept through the night in the family room and that it was already morning. He came back into the family room and we watched a little more TV. There was a good detective show on, so we both stayed up later than usual to watch it. Finally, at 10 p.m., he headed for bed. Or so I thought. I caught him standing at the front door again, staring out in wonder at the darkness. He turned to me and exclaimed, "It's still dark out!" Somehow, he had forgotten our conversation from an hour earlier and was still confused, thinking it was morning. I tried again to convince him that it was night and that he should go to bed. He reluctantly locked the front door and headed for his own room. Usually Otosan goes straight to his room and gets right into bed to sleep without changing clothes or even turning on his light. That night, I noticed that his bedroom light was still on when I went up the stairs an hour later. The next morning, he was outside working in the yard by the time I came down to make breakfast. So that's all I have for today. It was a little longer than usual, but, I think we all have had times when we wake up from a nap or even wake up in the morning and can't remember what day it is or what time it is. But it doesn't take long for us to figure it out, and then we go on about our way. And this kind of episode, like Otosan had, where he couldn't remember and hold on to what day or time it was, not day, but what time it was, that happened regularly after that. And especially after he moved to Tokyo, I experienced that with him several times a week. So anyway, I hope you'll be back next time, and I'll share the next section of Finding Yoyu. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.